The crystal spires of Lumina Prime burned under the red glow of enemy fire. Elder Vexnari watched from the high tower as another section of the great city crumbled into glowing fragments. The screams of his people echoed through the crystal halls, a sound that had never been heard in the 3,000 years of Zephyrian history. The Krolek ships hung in the purple sky like black metal vultures. Their weapons fired again and again, turning the beautiful crystal structures into dust and death. Vexnari's 6 arms trembled as he held the communication device. His people had never known war. They had never even thought about it. Violence was something they read about in ancient texts from other worlds, not something that could happen to them. Elder, the southern districts are gone, reported young Kylter, his voice breaking through the crystal resonance that all Zephyrians used. To speak. The evacuation centers are under direct attack. They are killing everyone, even the children. Vexnari closed his large blue eyes. The Kroleks had come from the dark edges of the galaxy 3 months ago. They had demanded surrender, tribute, and slaves. When the Zephyrians had tried to negotiate and offer peaceful solutions, the Kroleks had started bombing. They seemed to enjoy the destruction. "Have we received any responses to our distress calls?" Vexnari asked. "Nothing, Elder. Most species are too far away. Others are too afraid of the Kroleks to help. We are alone." The communication chamber shook as another blast hit the tower. Vexnari looked at the long-range transmitter, their last hope. The device could send messages across the entire galaxy, but it used so much power that they could only send one more signal before the Kroleks destroyed their power centers. "Prepare the emergency broadcast," Vexnari said. "Send it to every system in the galaxy. Tell them we need help. Tell them we are a peaceful people who have done nothing wrong. Tell them we need gentle guardians to protect our children." Kylter worked quickly at the crystal controls. The Zephyrian language was built on concepts of harmony and peace. Their translator programs had been designed to communicate with other peaceful species. The words they chose would be filtered through their understanding of the galaxy as a place where reasonable beings could work together. "The message is ready, Elder. But who will answer? Who would come to help strangers?" "Someone must," Vexnari said. "In all the galaxy, there must be someone who protects the innocent." Far across the void of space, on a small blue world in an unremarkable system, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison sat at his duty station in the Deep Space Communications Array. The facility was built into the Rocky Mountains of North America. Its massive dishes pointed toward the stars. Jake was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee of the night shift when the computer started beeping. "What have we got?" he asked Sergeant Amy Chun, who was monitoring the long-range sensors. "Unknown signal, sir. Very strong. Coming from outside the local cluster. The computer is trying to translate it now." Jake walked over to Amy's station. On the screen, lines of text appeared as the translation program worked on the alien message. The words made Jake sit up straight. "Sir, you need to see this," Amy said. Her voice tense. Jake read the message that appeared on the screen. It spoke of a peaceful people under attack. It described creatures who had never known war, who were being slaughtered by an aggressive empire. The message begged for help from any gentle species who could provide peaceful intervention and humanitarian protection. "Jesus," Jake whispered. "They're getting wiped out." The message included star charts and coordinates. It showed the location of Lumina Prime and described the ongoing attack. The translation program had done its best to convert Zephyrian concepts into English, but some things got lost. The Zephyrian word for protector came through as guardian. Their term for defensive intervention became peaceful help. "Sir, should I forward this to Fleet Command?" Amy asked. "Damn right you should. Get Admiral Sullivan on the line right now." Within an hour, The message was on the desk of Admiral Kate Sullivan at Pacific Fleet Command. She read it twice, then called in her staff. The conference room filled quickly with officers from different departments. "What do we know about this sector?" Sullivan asked Captain Tony Rodriguez, her intelligence chief. "It's unexplored, Admiral. About 800 light years from Earth. We've had no contact with any species in that region." "And this Krolex Empire?" "No data. But from the message, they sound like a typical aggressive expansionist force. The kind that takes what they want and kills anyone who gets in the way." Admiral Sullivan looked at the star charts again. The Zephyrians were asking for help, but they were also giving detailed information about an enemy that might threaten other innocent species. In her 30 years of service, Sullivan had learned to recognize genocide when she saw it. "What assets do we have available?" she asked. "The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet is finishing training exercises near Jupiter," said Captain Lisa Park from Fleet Operations. 12 ships, including the Retribution. Captain Alex Turner is in command. Sullivan thought about it. The message spoke of needing gentle guardians and peaceful protectors. The Zephyrians clearly expected some kind of diplomatic solution. They had no idea what they were asking for when they called Earth for help. "Get me Captain Turner," Sullivan said, "and prep the 3rd Fleet for immediate departure. Full combat load." "Admiral," said Commander Steve Walsh from the legal department, "we don't have any trees with these people. We don't even know if they're telling the truth." Sullivan looked at him with the expression that had made her famous in 3 different wars. "Commander, when someone calls for help because they're being slaughtered, we don't ask for paperwork. We ask how fast we can get there." An hour later, Captain Alex Turner received his orders aboard the UES Retribution. The message was simple and direct. A peaceful alien species was under attack by an aggressive empire. The 3rd Fleet would proceed to their location and provide humanitarian assistance. Turner looked at the alien message on his screen. The Zephyrians were asking for peaceful help, for gentle protection. They wanted someone to save their children and stop the killing. Turner had spent 15 years in the Colonial Marines before joining the fleet. He knew exactly what kind of help they needed. "Signal the fleet," he told his communications officer. "We jump in 6 hours. Combat conditions, full weapons load. And get me everything we have on siege warfare and orbital bombardment." The Zephyrians had called for help. They were about to get it. Captain Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the stars bend and twist as his fleet traveled through hyperspace. 12 warships moved together through the void, their destination a star system none of them had ever seen. The journey would take 5 days, and Turner used every hour to prepare for what they might find. "Captain, incoming message from the Vengeance," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communications station. "Put Commander Gray through." Lisa Gray's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but determined. Her heavy cruiser was the 2nd largest ship in the fleet, packed with enough firepower to level a small moon. "Alex, my intelligence. Team has been working on the alien message. We think we understand what we're walking into. Go ahead, Lisa." The Krolex Empire appears to be a standard aggressive expansion force. They hit civilian targets first to break morale, then demand surrender. Classic intimidation tactics. The problem is, the Zephyrians have never dealt with anything like this before. Turner nodded. "What about their defensive capabilities?" "Near zero. From what we can tell, they don't even have a military. Their whole civilization is built around peace and cooperation. They probably think wars are something that happened in ancient history." On another screen, Captain Nick Rodriguez appeared from the assault carrier U.E.S. Warhawk. His ship carried 2,000 Marines and enough fighters to control an entire star system. "Captain Turner," Nick said, "my pilots have been running combat simulations based on the star charts. If the Kroleks are using standard siege tactics, they'll have orbital bombardment platforms and fighter screens. My squadrons are ready for a full strike mission. Turner looked at both officers. The Third Fleet had been training for exactly this kind of operation. They called it humanitarian intervention, but everyone knew what it really meant. When peaceful people were being slaughtered, you didn't negotiate. You hit hard and fast, and you kept hitting until the killing stopped. What's our estimated arrival time? Turner asked. 36 hours, sir, replied his navigation officer. Good. Signal the fleet. All ships prepare for combat operations. This is not a diplomatic mission. Far ahead of the human fleet, in the Zephyrian system, Elder Vexnari waited in the underground shelters beneath Lumina Prime. Most of his people had been evacuated to the Crystal Caves, but the Kroleks kept finding new hiding places to bomb. The beautiful world that had known only peace for millennia was being turned into a graveyard. Elder, called young Kylter, running through the tunnels with excitement in his voice. The long-range sensors have detected something. Ships are coming. Vexnari felt hope rise in his chest for the first time in weeks. How many? 12 vessels, but they are huge. Much larger than anything in our databases. The energy signatures are unlike anything we have recorded. Other Zephyrians gathered around as Kylter shared the sensor readings. The approaching ships were massive, their power sources incredible. Clearly, this was an advanced civilization with technology far beyond what the peaceful Zephyrians had ever developed. They must be our gentle guardians, Vexnari said with relief. An ancient and wise species, coming to help us find peace with the Kroleks. But Elder, Kylter said, looking worried, the ships appear to be heavily armed. More weapons than we have ever seen on any vessel. Vexnari waved a crystal hand. They are probably defensive systems, young one. A peaceful species that travels between the stars would need protection from space debris and natural hazards. These must be the gentle protectors we called for. Above them, in the darkness of space, the Kroleks fleet continued its methodical destruction of Zephyrian civilization. War leader Groktar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his ships reduce another crystal city to glowing rubble. The Zephyrians had stopped trying to communicate after the first week. Now they just hid and died. War leader, reported his sensor operator. We are detecting incoming vessels at the edge of the system. Groktar turned his scarred face toward the display. The Kroleks had conquered 47 worlds in the last century. They had perfected the art of intimidation and slaughter. Other species had tried to interfere before, sending diplomats and peacekeepers. Those ships were now floating debris around various suns. How many ships? Groktar asked. 12, war leader. Unknown configuration. They appear to be large. Probably another coalition of weaklings, coming to beg us to stop. Groktar laughed, showing his sharp teeth. Send 3 destroyer squadrons to intercept them. Kill them quickly, so we can finish with these crystal creatures. The Kroleks destroyers moved toward the edge of the system, their crews eager for easy prey. In their experience, most species folded quickly when faced with superior firepower. The few that fought back were usually too civilized to commit to real violence. Back on the UE's retribution, Turner studied the tactical display as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge. What he saw made his jaw clench with anger. The beautiful blue and purple world showed massive fires and debris clouds. Entire continents were scarred with blast craters. This wasn't war, it was extermination. Captain, called Lieutenant Commander. Sam Wells from the sensor station. I'm reading massive civilian casualties planetside. Conservative estimate is millions dead. The bombardment appears to be targeting non-military structures, specifically. They're targeting civilians on purpose, Turner said quietly. Lisa, Nick, are you seeing this? Both officers confirmed from their ships. The tactical picture was clear. The Kroleks weren't trying to win a war or capture territory. They were committing genocide for sport. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "3 squadrons of enemy ships are moving to intercept us. They appear to be heading directly for our position." Turner looked at the display. 18 Kroleks destroyers were accelerating toward his fleet, their weapons already powering up. They weren't sending a diplomatic message or requesting identification. They were coming to kill. "All ships, battle stations," Turner commanded. "This is Captain Turner to all fleet units. The enemy has engaged in systematic genocide of civilian populations and is now moving to attack our humanitarian mission. Rules of engagement are weapons free. Repeat, weapons free." On the planet below, Elder Vexnari watched the long-range sensors with growing confusion. The approaching ships had moved into attack formation, and the Kroleks forces were responding with immediate aggression. This wasn't how peaceful first contact was supposed to work. "Elder," Kylter said, his voice filled with worry, "both fleets appear to be preparing for battle. Our gentle guardians seem to be ... heavily armed." Vexnari watched the tactical display with growing uncertainty. The ships that had answered their call for peaceful help were deploying weapons that registered off the scale of Zephyrian sensors. These weren't the diplomatic vessels of an enlightened civilization. These were warships. "Perhaps," Vexnari said slowly, "we should have been more specific in our message." In space above, Captain Turner watched the Kroleks destroyers close the distance to his fleet. The enemy ships were fast and appeared to be well armed, but they were making a critical mistake. They thought they were dealing with another peaceful species that would back down when threatened. They had no idea they had just declared war on Earth. The first Kroleks destroyer opened fire when it was still 50,000 kilometers away from the human fleet. A plasma bolt streaked through space, bright green death aimed at the UES Retribution. Captain Turner watched the incoming fire on his tactical display and felt something cold settle in his stomach. These aliens had just fired on a humanitarian mission without even trying to communicate. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Turner commanded. "Return fire, full spread." The human fleet scattered like a pack of wolves, each ship moving in a different direction, while their weapon systems came online. The UES Retribution rolled to avoid the plasma bolts, and Turner felt the ship shake as the enemy fire passed close enough to overload some of their shield generators. "Direct hit on destroyer lead," reported Lieutenant Commander Wells from the sensor station. "Their shields are down. Hull breach detected." Turner looked at the tactical display in surprise. One salvo from the Retribution had crippled the lead Krolek ship. The enemy vessels were fast, and their weapons hit hard, but their armor was weak. They seemed built for intimidating helpless civilians, not fighting real warships. "Lisa, take your group and hit their left flank," Turner ordered. "Nick, launch fighters and get behind them." Commander Gray's voice came through the communications system from the UES Vengeance. "Roger that, Alex. Moving to attack position." The Vengeance and 3 escort destroyers peeled away from the main formation, their weapons already charging for another volley. Gray had fought in the colony wars and knew how to handle aggressive enemies. Her ships moved like hunters, using their superior speed to get into position for killing shots. Captain Rodriguez launched his fighters from the UES Warhawk. 60 small craft poured out of the carrier's launch bays, their pilots eager for combat. The fighters spread out in a 3-dimensional formation that the Kroleks had never seen before. Most species fought in flat plains, like ancient naval battles, but humans had learned to use all of space as their battlefield. War leader Grok Tar watched his tactical display with growing confusion and anger. One of his destroyers was already crippled, and the enemy ships were moving in patterns that made no sense. They scattered and reformed, attacked from multiple angles, and seemed to coordinate without any visible command structure. "What are these? Creatures?" he snarled at his sensor operator. "Unknown war leader. Their weapons are more powerful than expected, and their tactics are unusual. They fight like ... like predators." Another explosion rocked Groktar's flagship as human fighters strafed his ship. The small craft moved impossibly fast, hitting his vessels from angles that should have been impossible to attack from. His gunners couldn't track them. "All ships? Concentrate fire on the large vessel," Groktar ordered. "Kill their flagship, and the rest will surrender." 6 Krolex destroyers turned their weapons on the UE's retribution. Plasma bolts and particle beams converged on Turner's ship, lighting up the darkness with deadly energy. Turner felt his ship shake under the impact, and warning lights flashed across his bridge. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported his damage control officer. "Shield generators at 60%. Status on enemy fleet?" Turner asked. 4 destroyers. "Down, 2 crippled," Wells replied. "They're concentrating fire on us." Turner smiled grimly. The Krolex were making another mistake. They thought killing the command ship would end the battle, but human fleet doctrine was different. Every ship captain was trained to fight independently if needed. "All ships execute pattern Delta," Turner ordered. Full autonomous engagement. The human fleet scattered again, each ship now hunting on its own. The Krolex formation, built around. Tight control and overwhelming firepower couldn't adapt to the chaos. Human ships appeared from unexpected angles, fired devastating salvos, then disappeared behind asteroids or debris before the enemy could respond. On the planet below, Elder Vexnari and his people watched the battle through their long-range sensors. What they saw horrified them. The ships that had answered their call for peaceful help were destroying the Krolex fleet with methodical efficiency. These weren't gentle guardians. These were predators. "Elder," Coulter whispered, "our rescuers are winning, but they fight like nothing we have ever seen. They attack from all directions at once. They show no mercy." Vexnari watched another Krolex ship explode on the display. In 15 minutes of combat, the human fleet had destroyed or crippled 12 enemy vessels. The Krolex ships that had terrorized his people for months were being hunted down like wounded animals. "What have we called? To our world?" Vexnari asked quietly. In space, the battle was ending. War leader Groktar's flagship was the last Krolex vessel still fighting. His ship was surrounded by human vessels that moved like sharks around wounded prey. His crew was dead or dying, his weapons were offline, and his engines were failing. "Surrender," came a voice through his communication system, speaking perfect Krolex. "Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Groktar laughed bitterly. In his 40 years of conquest, no enemy had ever demanded his surrender. They had all begged for mercy or died quietly. These new creatures spoke his language, but gave orders like they expected to be obeyed. "I am War Leader Groktar of the Krolex." "Empire," he replied. "I do not surrender to unknown weaklings." The response came immediately. "This is Captain Turner of the Earth Fleet. You have committed genocide against civilian populations. Your ship is disabled and your fleet is destroyed. Surrender now or be destroyed." Groktar looked at his tactical display. Every other ship in his squadron was gone. The human vessels surrounded him with weapons trained on his ship. For the first time in his life, he was the one facing superior firepower. "What are you?" he asked. "We're the people who answer when someone calls for help," Turner replied. "Last chance." Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster led the boarding party that took Groktar's ship. Her Marines moved through the corridors like they had been designed for this kind of fighting. They cleared room after room with precision and speed that left the surviving. Krolek's crew, stunned. Foster found Groktar on his bridge, wounded but still alive. The war leader looked at her with confusion and fear. She was smaller than a Krolek's warrior, but she moved with confidence that spoke of countless battles. "You fight like demons," Groktar said in broken English. "What world makes creatures like you?" Foster looked at him through her helmet visor. "Earth, and we're not demons. We're just very good at protecting what matters." Within an hour, the space around Lumina Prime was secure. The Krolek's fleet was destroyed or captured, and human ships were already moving toward the planet to begin evacuation operations. But the Zephyrians watching from below were no longer sure they had been rescued. Captain Turner opened a communication channel to the planet. "This is Captain Turner of the Earth Fleet. We received your distress call. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We are prepared to begin humanitarian operations." Elder Vexnari stared at the communications device. The voice was calm and professional, but behind it was the power that had just destroyed an entire enemy fleet in minutes. These humans had answered their call for peaceful help by bringing overwhelming violence. "Thank you," Vexnari replied carefully, "for stopping the killing." "That's what we do," Turner said simply. "We'll start evacuating your wounded to our medical ships. And we need to talk about this Krolek's empire. From what we've learned, this attack was just the beginning." Vexnari closed his large blue eyes. The Zephyrians had called for gentle guardians and received merciless killers instead. But those killers had saved his people when no one else would come. Perhaps, he thought, the galaxy was a more dangerous place than his peaceful people had ever imagined. Captain Turner stood in the detention cell aboard the UES Retribution, looking down at war leader Groktar. The Krolek's commander was strapped to a medical bed, his wounds treated by human doctors who had saved his life only so they could question him. Major Sam Collins sat at a portable terminal, downloading data from Krolek's databases with frightening efficiency. "Tell me about your empire," Turner said quietly. Groktar laughed bitterly. "You think I will betray my people to unknown creatures?" "Your people?" Turner's voice grew cold. "Your databases show 47 conquered worlds, billions of dead civilians, children used as slave labor, entire species wiped out for sport." He leaned closer to the alien. "Your people are monsters." Collins looked up from his terminal. "Captain, you need to see this. The intelligence we've gathered from their ships is worse than we thought." Turner walked over to Collins's station. On the screen were star maps showing the full extent of Krolek's territory. Red marks indicated conquered systems. Yellow marks showed worlds under attack. Green marks showed targets planned for future invasion. "How many species have they destroyed?" Turner asked. "At least 12, completely wiped out. 23 others reduced to slave populations. And this is just what we can confirm from their military records." Collins pointed to a section of the map. "They have 3 more fleets operating in this sector alone, each one larger than the force we just destroyed." Turner studied the data with growing anger. The Krolek's empire wasn't just another aggressive species. They were systematic exterminators who enjoyed causing suffering. Every world they touched was left broken and dying. "What about active operations?" Turner asked. Collins brought up another screen. 6 worlds currently under siege. 2 more scheduled for invasion within the month. "Captain, they're not trying to build an empire. They're trying to empty the galaxy of anyone who isn't them." Groktar had been listening to their conversation. Now he spoke up, his voice filled with pride. "You cannot stop the empire. We are. Too strong, too many. You killed 1 small fleet, but hundreds more will come for you." Turner turned back to the Krolek's commander. "Where is your main fleet?" I will tell you nothing. Collins pulled up another file. We don't need him to talk, Captain. Their computer systems are surprisingly easy to crack. The main Krolex fleet is based at their capital world, Krolex Prime, approximately 400 ships, including dreadnoughts. And the other fleets? Scattered across their territory, but they can be recalled within 2 weeks if the High Command orders it. Turner looked at the star maps again. The scope of the Krolex Empire was staggering. They controlled hundreds of systems and had military forces that dwarfed anything Earth had ever assembled. But the intelligence also showed something else. The Krolex had never faced real opposition. Their tactics were crude, their ships were built for intimidation rather than combat, and their crews were used to easy victories against helpless targets. Send. A priority message to Admiral Sullivan, Turner ordered. Include all intelligence data and tactical analysis. Recommend immediate fleet deployment for extended operations. 8 hours later, Admiral Sullivan stood in the war room at Pacific. Fleet Command, surrounded by her senior staff. The holographic display showed the Krolex Empire in all its terrible scope. The room was silent as officers absorbed the scale of what they were facing. Casualties from Captain Turner's engagement? Sullivan asked. Minimal, reported Captain Rodriguez from Fleet Operations. 3 wounded, no deaths. The Krolex ships were no match for our tactics or weapons. And their fleet strength? Individually, their ships are inferior to ours. But they have overwhelming numbers. If they mass their forces, they could potentially overwhelm our expeditionary fleets through sheer quantity. Sullivan studied the tactical projections. The Krolex had been operating unopposed for decades, growing stronger, while peaceful species either submitted or died. They had never encountered a military force that could match their aggression with superior violence. Recommendations? Sullivan asked. Admiral Ryan Blake, commander of the First Fleet, spoke up. We need to hit them hard and fast before they can organize a response. The intelligence shows they're not used to fighting real opposition. If we can destroy their main fleet and capture their capital, the outlying forces might surrender. And if they don't surrender, then we hunt them down system by system until they're all dead or in prison. The room fell quiet. What Blake was suggesting was a war of extermination against an empire that spanned hundreds of worlds. It was the largest military operation in human history. Admiral, said Commander Walsh from the legal department, we're talking about declaring war on an entire civilization. The political implications alone, ... Sullivan cut him off. Commander, when someone is committing genocide on this scale, politics become irrelevant. The question is simple. Do we have the capability to stop them? Blake nodded. Yes, ma'am. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick, but we can do it. The First and Second Fleets combined have enough firepower to level their capital system. After that, it becomes a cleanup operation. Time frame? 6 months to reach their capital, assuming we can keep our supply lines secure. Another year to eliminate their remaining forces, if they choose to fight. Sullivan looked around the room at her officers. She was asking them to approve a war that could last years and cost thousands of human lives. But the alternative was allowing the Krolex to continue their systematic destruction of innocent species. Colonel Wright, she said to the Marine commander, your assessment of ground operations? Danny Wright had been studying the intelligence reports on Krolex worlds. Their ground forces are even weaker than their fleet, Admiral. They rely on orbital bombardment and intimidation. My Marines can take any world they hold, but we'll need a lot more troops if we're going to occupy their entire empire. We're not occupying, Sullivan said firmly. We're liberating. Every world we take, we turn over to the surviving local populations or to refugee groups from destroyed worlds. Our job is to break the Krolex Empire, not replace it. The planning session continued for 6 hours. By the end, they had developed a comprehensive strategy for dismantling an interstellar empire. It was audacious, dangerous, and absolutely necessary. Meanwhile, in the Krolex capital system, Emperor Thraskol received the news of his fleet's destruction with disbelief. No enemy had ever defeated a Krolex squadron so completely. The reports spoke of unknown aliens with impossible tactics and devastating weapons. Who are these creatures? He demanded of his intelligence chief. Unknown, Emperor. They appeared from outside our territory, destroyed our ships, and captured war leader Grok Tar. They fight like nothing we have encountered before. Thraskol studied the tactical reports. The enemy had used coordinated attacks from multiple directions, deployed small fighters that moved independently, and shown no interest in negotiation or surrender. Their weapons had cut through Krolex armor like it was made of paper. Recall the 7th and 9th fleets, he ordered. If these aliens want war, we will give them more war than they can handle. Emperor, that will leave several conquered worlds. Undefended, the slaves can wait. Find these creatures and destroy them before they become a real threat. But Thraskol was making the same mistake that every Krolex enemy had made. He was underestimating the scope of what he faced. The humans weren't just another species to be conquered or intimidated. They were apex predators from a death world, and they had decided that the Krolex Empire needed to die back on Lumina Prime. Elder Vexnari watched human medical ships treating Zephyrian wounded with careful precision. The same hands that had destroyed an enemy fleet were now gently healing his people. It was a contradiction that his peaceful mind struggled to understand. Captain Turner materialized on the crystal platform using human transport technology. He looked tired but determined as he approached the Zephyrian leader. Elder Vexnari, we need to discuss your future security, Turner said. The fleet we destroyed was just a small part in the Krolex Empire. They will send more ships. What do you recommend? Vexnari asked. Turner's expression was grim. We're going to end the Krolex Empire permanently. All of it. But that will take time, and you need immediate protection. You would do this for strangers? Turner looked out at the Crystal City, still smoking from Krolex bombardment. You called. For help, we answered. That makes you our responsibility now. Vexnari realized that his people's desperate plea had started something much larger than a rescue mission. They had accidentally declared war on behalf of the entire galaxy. 3 months after the battle at Lumina Prime, the human war machine had grown into something the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral Ryan Blake stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Devastator, watching his combined fleet prepare for the final assault on Krolex space. 147 warships stretched across the star system in perfect formation, each one armed with weapons designed to end civilizations. Admiral, all fleet units report ready for jump, said Captain Maria Santos from the navigation station. Blake looked at the tactical display, showing the route to Krolex Prime. Behind his fleet, 23 liberated worlds were rebuilding under human protection. Each world had told the same story of Krolex brutality, and each liberation had added to the evidence of systematic genocide that stretched back decades. Signal all ships, Blake commanded. Initiate jump sequence. Destination, Krolex Prime. Today we end this. The human fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind them a trail of broken Krolex outposts and freed slave worlds. In 3 months of campaigning, they had cut through the outer territories of the Empire like a sword through silk. Every engagement had ended the same way. The Krolex fought with the desperation of cornered animals, but their tactics were centuries behind human military doctrine. Captain Nick Rodriguez flew his fighter through the asteroid field that surrounded the Krolex frontier world of Galar. His squadron had been hunting Krolex raiders for 6 hours, using the rocks as cover while they picked off enemy ships one by one. The Krolex had never learned to fight in 3 dimensions, and their pilots flew in straight lines that made them easy targets. "Dragon leader to Dragon squadron," Rodriguez called over the radio. "Sweep complete. All enemy fighters down. Moving to support ground operations." Below on Galler's surface, Colonel Danny Wright's Marines were finishing the liberation of another slave camp. The Krolex had used the local population as forced labor in uranium mines, working them to death in radioactive tunnels. Wright watched his medics treating aliens who looked like walking skeletons, their bodies destroyed by years of exposure and starvation. "Colonel," reported Sergeant Lisa Park, "the camp is secure. We found over 3,000 survivors, but they're in bad shape." Wright looked at the alien refugees. They belonged to a species called the Viltar, according to the databases. The Krolex had wiped out their homeworld 5 years ago and kept the survivors as slaves. These were probably the last of their kind. "Get them to the medical ships," Wright ordered, "and send a full report to Fleet Command. Add it to the evidence file." Dr. Helen Price worked in the medical bay of the UES Retribution, documenting another horror from the Krolex files. The data they had captured from enemy ships painted a picture of evil that shocked even experienced military officers. The Krolex didn't just conquer worlds. They experimented on the survivors, trying to breed better slaves or create new weapons from living tissue. "Captain Turner," Price called as he entered the medical bay, "you need to see this latest data." Turner looked at the genetic records Price had recovered from a Krolex research station. The files showed experiments on children, attempts to create hybrid species that could survive in toxic environments, and breeding programs designed to produce slaves with specific traits. "How many species have they done this to?" Turner asked quietly. "At least 30 different races. Some of them no longer exist except in these labs." Price's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Captain, what the Krolex have done goes beyond war crimes. They've turned genocide into a science." Turner studied the records in silence. Every new piece of evidence made it clearer that the Krolex Empire represented everything humanity had learned to despise. They were bullies who preyed on the weak, scientists who tortured innocents for knowledge, and conquerors who destroyed everything they touched. "Send copies to Admiral Blake," Turner said. "Make sure every ship captain sees this. I want our people to understand exactly what we're fighting." In the command center of Krolex Prime, Emperor Thraskol watched his empire crumble on the tactical displays. System after system showed red markers as human forces swept through his territory. His fleets were being destroyed faster than he could redeploy them, and every battle brought the enemy closer to his capital. Status of the 7th Fleet? He demanded. "Destroyed at Vex High, Emperor," reported his military commander. Admiral Korth managed to send a message before his ship was destroyed. He said the humans fight like nothing we have ever encountered. They use tactics that make no sense. "What do you mean?" "They attack from all directions at once. Their small fighters move independently, but coordinate perfectly. Their ships appear and disappear using stealth technology we cannot detect. And Emperor," the commander paused, "they show no mercy. They do not accept surrender from our ships." Thraskol felt something he had never experienced before: fear. In 50 years of conquest, he had never faced an enemy that couldn't be intimidated or bribed into submission. These humans seemed to view the Krolex Empire as something that needed to be completely destroyed. "What about our defensive systems around the capital?" "Fully operational, Emperor. 400 ships, orbital defense platforms, and ground-based weapons. Even if the humans have superior tactics, they cannot overcome such numbers." "But even—" As he spoke, the commander wasn't sure he believed his own words. The humans had already overcome impossible odds at every battle. They fought with a combination of technology and fury that the Krolek's military machine couldn't match. Back on Lumina Prime, Elder Vexnari received daily reports from the human fleet as they carved their way through Krolek space. Each message brought news of another liberated world, another freed species, another step closer to ending the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. "Elder," said young Kylter, "the latest intelligence shows the humans have freed over 40 worlds in just 3 months. Species that were thought extinct are being found alive in Krolek slave camps." Vexnari studied the star charts showing human advances. The careful, methodical destruction of the Krolek's empire was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Most wars were fought for territory or resources. This was something different. This was extermination based on moral judgment. "Have we created something wonderful or terrible?" Vexnari asked quietly. "Perhaps both, Elder. The humans protect innocent life with the same fury they use to destroy those who threaten it. They are healers and killers in the same moment." As if to prove his point, another report arrived showing human medical ships treating refugees from a liberated world while human warships hunted down the fleeing Krolek's garrison. The same species that had gently healed Zephyrian children was systematically destroying an entire interstellar civilization. Captain Turner received his final orders as the human fleet approached Krolek's Prime. Admiral Blake's message was simple and direct. No Krolek's military forces were to survive the coming battle. The Empire's leadership would be captured for trial, but their war machine would be completely destroyed. "All stations, prepare for final assault," Turner announced to his crew. "We've come 800 light years to end this war. Today we finish what the Kroleks started when they decided to prey on innocent people." In the fighter bays of the UES, Warhawk, Captain Rodriguez briefed his pilots for the largest space battle in human history. "Remember, the Kroleks have numbers, but we have everything else. Stick to your training, watch each other's backs, and show them what happens when you threaten peaceful species." Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster prepared her Marines for the assault on Krolek's prime surface. "The intelligence shows this world has been turned into a fortress. They'll fight hard because they know we're not here to conquer. We're here to end them." As the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Krolek's capital system, sensors detected the massive defensive force waiting for them. 400 enemy ships, orbital weapons platforms, and ground-based missile systems created a wall of firepower that would have stopped any conventional assault. But the humans weren't conventional. They were apex predators from a death world, and they had spent 3 months learning exactly how to kill Krolek's ships efficiently. The final battle was about to begin, and Emperor Thraskell was about to discover why you should never threaten the innocent when Earth is listening. The space around Krolek's Prime erupted in light and fire as the largest battle in galactic history began. Admiral Blake watched from the bridge of the UES Devastator as 400 Krolek ships rushed toward his fleet in a desperate final charge. The enemy formation looked impressive on the tactical display, but Blake had learned something important during 3 months of warfare. The Kroleks had never fought anyone who could fight back. "All ships execute Battle Plan Omega," Blake commanded. "Show them what Earth teaches its children about protecting the innocent." The human fleet scattered like a school of fish suddenly attacked by a shark, but instead of fleeing, each ship became a predator hunting in a coordinated pack. Captain Turner's group hit the Krolek's left flank, while Commander Gray's heavy cruisers smashed through their center. Captain Rodriguez launched wave after wave of fighters that swarmed over the enemy ships like angry wasps. Emperor Thraskell stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching his grand fleet die around him. Human ships appeared from impossible angles, struck with devastating precision, then vanished before his gunners could respond. His orbital defense platforms, built to destroy entire invasion fleets, were being picked apart by fighters that moved. Too fast to track. How are they doing this? He screamed at his tactical officer. Emperor, they fight in 3 dimensions while we fight in 2. Their ships work together like a single organism. And their weapons ... The officer's voice broke. Emperor, they have turned war into an art form. On the surface of Krolex Prime, Lieutenant Colonel Foster's Marines landed in the capital city. Like a storm of controlled violence. The Krolex ground forces had prepared for a traditional siege, but the humans dropped directly into the city center using stealth transports. Foster's troops moved through the streets with surgical precision, capturing key installations while avoiding civilian areas. Alpha Team, secure the government complex, Foster ordered. Bravo Team, take the communications center. Charlie Team, find the prison facilities and free any survivors you can. The Krolex soldiers fought desperately, but they had never faced an enemy that treated urban warfare as a specialty. Human troops moved through buildings like ghosts, appeared behind enemy positions without warning, and coordinated their attacks with orbital support that struck with impossible accuracy. Colonel Wright led the assault on the Emperor's Palace, a massive structure built from the bones of conquered worlds. His Marines blasted through defensive positions that had been designed to stop conventional armies, not soldiers who had learned to fight in the ruins of bombed cities and the jungles of hostile worlds. Sir, reported Sergeant Park as they reached the main throne room. We found the Emperor's private chambers. There are ... records here. Documentation of everything they've done. Wright looked at the walls covered with trophies from destroyed civilizations. Skulls from dozens of species, artwork looted from burned worlds, and detailed records of every genocide the Krolex had committed. It was a museum of horrors that made his stomach turn ... in space. The battle was reaching its climax. Captain Turner's ship fought alongside the UES Vengeance as they cornered the last group of Krolex dreadnoughts. The enemy ships were massive and heavily armed, but their crews were breaking under the relentless human assault. Captain, reported Lieutenant Wells, the enemy flagship is trying to ram us. Turner watched Emperor Thraiskol's ship turn toward the U-East Retribution in a final desperate attack. The massive Krolex vessel accelerated toward them, its weapons firing wildly in all directions. All power to forward shields, Turner ordered. Let him come. At the last moment, Turner's ship rolled aside and fired a full spread of missiles into the enemy flagship's engines. The Krolex vessel spun out of control, its hull cracking under the stress. Emergency pods began launching from the dying ship as the crew abandoned. Their Emperor Doctor Price worked frantically in the detention center they had established in orbit around Krolex Prime. Hundreds of survivors from hidden prison camps were being brought up from the planet's surface, many of them species that had been thought extinct for years. Each rescue revealed new horrors about what the Krolex had done to their prisoners. Captain Turner, she called as he entered the medical bay, we found survivors from the Owlery species. The Krolex told the galaxy they were extinct, but they've been keeping them alive for experiments. Turner looked at the fragile alien beings on the medical tables. They looked like living skeletons, their bodies broken by years of torture and starvation. But their eyes still held intelligence and hope. How many? Turner asked quietly. About 300, scattered across different facilities. Captain, some of these people have been prisoners for 20 years. They've kept breeding programs, trying to create perfect slaves. Turner felt the familiar cold anger that had driven him across 800 light-years of space. The Krolex hadn't just committed genocide. They had turned it into entertainment. Emperor Thraskol was brought aboard the U-East Devastator in shackles, his once proud armor stripped away. Admiral Blake looked down at the creature who had ordered the deaths of billions of innocent beings. The Emperor was smaller than Blake had expected, just another bully who had never faced real opposition. "You have destroyed my empire," Thraskell said, his voice filled with rage. "But you cannot rule the galaxy. You are too few, too weak." Blake studied the alien Emperor with cold eyes. "We're not here to rule anything. We're here to make sure monsters like you never hurt anyone again." "What are you?" Thraskell asked. "What world creates killers like you?" Blake's expression didn't change. "Earth. A world where everything tries to kill you from the moment you're born. We learn to fight back against impossible odds, and we learn to protect those who can't protect themselves. You cannot kill us all. The Kroleks are too many, too strong. Watch us," Blake said simply. The cleanup took 6 more months. Human fleets hunted down every remaining Kroleks military unit across their former empire. No quarter was given to ships that had participated in genocide, but crews that surrendered and provided information about prison camps were allowed to live under guard. The Galactic Protection Accords were signed 1 year after the Battle of Kroleks Prime. Representatives from 47 liberated species gathered on Lumina Prime to establish new rules for galactic civilization. The humans provided the military backing, but the freed species wrote the laws. Elder Vexnari stood beside Admiral Sullivan as they watched the ceremony. The crystal halls of Lumina Prime had been rebuilt, stronger and more beautiful than before. But the Zephyrians were no longer naive about the galaxy they lived in. "Admiral," Vexnari said, "our people still struggle to understand what we unleashed when we called for help." Sullivan looked out at the representatives of dozens of species, who now lived free because Earth had answered a desperate plea for help. "You didn't unleash anything, Elder. You just reminded us why we exist." "And what is that?" "To make sure the strong don't prey on the weak. To make sure bullies like the Kroleks never rise again. To be the guardians you called for, even if we're not gentle about it." Captain Turner stood with his crew on the observation deck of the UES Retribution, watching the ceremonies below. His ship bore the scars of a dozen battles, and his crew had seen horrors that would give them nightmares for years. But they had also saved countless lives and ended a reign of terror that had lasted decades. "Sir?" asked Lieutenant Wells. "What happens now? Do we go home?" Turner looked out at the stars where human ships patrolled the trade routes between peaceful worlds. Earth's children had spread across the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as protectors. They had become the answer to every species' prayers for help. "No," Turner said quietly. "This is home now. Wherever innocent people need protection, wherever bullies think they can hurt the helpless, that's where we belong." The galaxy had called for help and gotten the Merciless Deathworlder fleet. Instead, it was exactly what they needed, even if they hadn't known it at the time. Elder Vexnari sent one final message across the galaxy, transmitted to every inhabited world. "Be careful what you ask for when you call for help. Sometimes the universe sends exactly what you need, not what you expect. And sometimes that makes all the difference."